Hello learners, today we are going to learn about the term biodiversity and what are the levels of biodiversity, the importance of biodiversity and what causes the loss of biodiversity, the relation between biodiversity and ecological balance, how can we conserve biodiversity, formulate biodiversity-friendly tourism norms and practices. So the term biodiversity refers to the totality of the genes, the species and the ecosystem of a region. This term, biological diversity, relates to the genetic diversity, that is, the amount of genetic variability within a species, and ecological diversity, that is the number of species in a community of organisms, as given by Norse and McManus, 1980. The term biodiversity was first coined by Walter Rosen, and according to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, this term biodiversity was defined as variability among the living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, aquatic and marine, and the ecological complexes of which they are part, including diversity within the species, between the species and of the ecosystem, according to the UNEP 1992. Biodiversity has accumulated through the geological time due to a range of evolutionary process. We now find that the number of flowering plants have increased from 25,000 some 125 million years ago to 200,000 now and more. The marine and the continental life have also increased exponentially. The microbial diversity is indefinite. So there are three levels of biodiversity: genetic diversity, and you have the species diversity and community and ecosystem diversity. So let us discuss these different types or the different levels of biodiversity. Genetic diversity refers to the variation of the genes within the species, in the alleles, that is different variants of the same genes, in the entire genes, that is the trait determining particular characteristics, or in the structure of the chromosome. If there is a high genetic variability, the species can adapt to any environmental changes, or it is better adapted to change environmental conditions. Low genetic diversity leads to uniformity, which is an advantage in increasing the crop productivity, but it can also pose a threat if the genetic diversity is less. Although it may help you in increasing the crop production, but it can pose a threat during a pathogen attack and it may destroy the whole crop. So it is necessary to have a high genetic diversity in order for better adjustment to the environmental conditions. The amount of genetic variation is the basis of speciation. Genetic diversity within a species increases with environmental variability. If there is environmental variability, the genetic diversity increases. No two organisms of a species are genetically identical due to high level of genetic polymorphism in the gene loci. Then the next is the species diversity, which refers to the variation or the variety of species. Then the third one you have is the ecosystem diversity, which refers to species or genetic diversity of the communities. So according to the Wildlife Institute of India, the country has been divided into 10 biogeographical regions. The Trans-Himalayan region, which has a sparse vegetation, but here you will find the richest wild sheep and goat community exists. The snow leopard and the migratory black-necked crane are found in this Trans-Himalayan region, although the vegetation is sparse. The Himalayan region, which is the second biogeographical region, have a rich species diversity, having the highest mountain ranges. The third biogeographical region is the Indian desert, consisting of an extensive grassland, and the Great Indian Bustard is found in this region or in the Indian desert. The semi-arid region is the transition zone between the desert and the Western Ghats, and the Western Ghats are rich with dense forests. The Deccan Plateau is mainly semi-arid, while the Gangetic Plain lies in the north, extending up to the foothills of the Himalayas. The next biogeographical region consists of the northeastern region, which has the richest biodiversity with a variety of orchids, bamboos, ferns, and many other species of medicinal importance. It is the domestication center for many cultivated plants like mango, banana, citrus, etc. Then we have the Lakshadweep Island, which is situated in the Arabian Sea, and the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands in the Bay of Bengal, which are the two major group of islands. These islands, they harbor many endemic species of plants and animals. The coastal region, extending over 5,500 kilometers with the mangrove vegetation, is a characteristic of the estuarine tracts along the coast. Let us know what is the importance of biodiversity. So, since we know what the term biodiversity means by now, so why is biodiversity important? Let us see. The food we eat, the clothes we wear, the aesthetics, the industry, sports or recreation are all linked to the components of biodiversity. Many life-saving drugs have been isolated from the flowering plants, which are medicinally important and are being used for treating certain ailments. The microorganisms, they are also a source of many useful antibiotics. For example, you have penicillin, which is extracted from Penicillium notatum. Then you have many antibiotics like tetracycline, cephalosporin, etc., which are all isolated from the microorganisms. This is an image of Texas baccata, which is a medicinally important plant used for treating the ovarian cancer. And this plant, from this plant, a drug Taxol, a compound Taxol is isolated, which is used for treating the ovarian cancer. Then figure 2 shows the cinchona plant, from where quinine is extracted, which is useful for treating malaria. So these plants, they are all found growing in the biogeographical zones. This is another medicinally important plant, Digitalis purpurea. Figure 3 shows the image of Digitalis purpurea, and also commonly known as the foxglove plant, which is used for treating heart diseases. And a compound, digoxin, is extracted, which is used for treating the heart ailments. Figure 4 shows the poppy plant, as everyone is familiar with. Poppy or Papaver somniferum, it is the source of the opium, which contains morphine and which is used as an analgesic as well as a narcotic drug. Many edible plants, wild plants and animals, they are also a source of food for living for people who live in the forest area. So these wild plants, these medicinally important plants, and also the endemic plants, these useful plants, they all are found in these zones or in these biogeographical zones. And the wild plants, the edible wild plants and animals, they provide food for the people who live in the forest. The genetic diversity promotes and ensures high agricultural yield. Different plant species also offer great economic importance. They provide furniture. They are also useful in the paper industry, in building houses. The cotton, flax, hemp, jute and agave, they provide fiber for the manufacture of ropes, textiles, etc. The plants also find use in the tanning industry, rubber and dye industry, in perfumes, resins, gums, oils, insecticides and other products. So these products, they are all isolated or they find use in these industry, and these are all extracted. The resins are extracted from plants. Some plants yield resins, some plants yield gum, some plants yield oils, and some may act as an insecticide, etc. The beauty of the wild nature and the animals, they are a source of attracting the tourists and the visitors, and this provides a source of economical wealth for the parks and the forests. Ecotourism is a growing outdoor recreational activity and can be used to promote the conservation of natural and cultural heritage of an area and improve the living standards of the inhabitants of that area. So here comes the importance of biodiversity, or how this tourism, the plants, the wild nature and the animals which attracts the tourists and the visitors, they provide recreational activity, and also they improve the living standard of the inhabitants of that host region or that region, and also conserve the natural and cultural heritage of that area. Biodiversity also provides aesthetic and cultural values, which includes ecotourism, bird watching, wildlife, pet keeping and gardening. There are many plants which are considered sacred and worshipped and are worshipped in homes, and so you also conserve these plants through their religious beliefs and cultural practices. For example, Ocimum sanctum or the Tulsi, Ficus religiosa, the peepal tree, and Prosopis khedri, they are all conserved because these plants are considered sacred by people. Now let us come to the biodiversity and ecological balance. A rich biodiversity reflects high stability of the ecosystem. Ecosystems such as the tundra are fragile and experience sudden and immense shift in the population size. So, if the region is rich in diversity, the ecosystem is stable. A wheat field ecosystem may also experience changes if they faced many biotic and abiotic shifts. In an ecosystem, there are a number of species which participate in the ecological processes such as production, nutrient cycling, decomposition, regulation of the climate, in addition to the formation of soil and conservation. These functions create a condition suitable for the existence of life. In an ecosystem which have rich diversity, the number of species and the interaction among them is large. And any loss or elimination of a species may have little effect on the ecological balance. While in a small ecosystem, the number of species in the food web is small, so loss of any species would affect ecosystem balance. Increased linkages with a number of species confers stability. So, if there are a number of species and if there are a number of linkages, then the ecosystem is stable. Now, let us study what causes the loss of this biodiversity. There are many causes for the loss of biodiversity. So, the first one is loss and fragmentation of habitat. If the habitat is fragmented, or if there is a loss in the, if the species loses its habitat, then there is a loss in biodiversity. Destructing the habitat is the main reason for the loss of biodiversity in the terrestrial and the coastal ecosystem. If you destroy the habitat, then it causes loss of biodiversity, both in the terrestrial as well as in the coastal ecosystem. Mankind requires food, clothing and shelter and other needs, and so in order to fulfill their needs, they try to construct dams, they try to destroy the forests. Doing these anthropogenic activities, now they result in a loss in their, or it affects the river and the stream habitat, as in the construction of dams. In the marine ecosystem also, development in the coastal areas have destroyed the coral reefs and the nearby shore communities. Large forest areas have been cleared for agriculture and for obtaining timber. Such activities result in the fragmentation of habitat of a number of species, which eventually vanish, leading to the loss of other species which are dependent on it, ensuring a chain of destruction. The second point is species introduction. If you introduce a new species either accidentally or intentionally, it will also lead to the loss of the native biodiversity of that region, and they are a threat to the threatened species. Since the newly introduced species may be superior, it could establish themselves and flourish at the expense of the original species. So, the sudden change pressure wipes out the original biodiversity of that area. For example, you can see in this photograph the dodo, which lived in the island of Mauritius, and this bird became extinct by 1681 due to the introduction of pigs to the island, which ate their eggs. The dodo is a flightless bird that lays their egg on the ground, and they are fearless of people also. So, in an island system where the habits are physically limited, the survival of the native species becomes a constraint, as it is not able to adapt to the new predator. So, the pig which was introduced in the island, they ate up the eggs of the dodo, and hence these dodo they eventually became extinct. The resources available may not be sufficient for both the species to coexist, hence the superior species survives. So the superior species here is the pig, which eats up the eggs of the dodo and hence leading to the extinction of this bird. The third point is the overexploitation of plant and animal species. If there is excessive hunting or fishing and exploitation of the birds or the fishes, these exploitations pose a major threat to the threatened species of birds, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, and overfishing in the marine habitats. The forests, the fisheries, and the wildlife resources have been overexploited to the point of extinction. For example, you have here, this is the picture of a pigeon pea, a passenger pigeon pea, which were once the most abundant birds in North America, and their flock darkened the sky when they flew. But these passenger birds have now disappeared. Their flock covered about 400 kilometers long with no less than 2 billion birds and as many as 90 nests per tree. The droppings of these birds, they acted as a fertilizer for the forest where these pigeons roosted. The young ones and the adults of these passenger pigeon were hunted for food and were killed indiscriminately. So their rate of reproduction was not able to cope with their high rate of elimination, as this pigeon laid only one egg. So the last of its kind, which died in 1914, is now kept in the US Natural Museum in Washington. So this is because of overexploitation of this species. The humans, for their food search or for their commodities, they search for precious commodities like ivory, pets, etc., which affects the survival of other species, of these species. Another cause is pollution. Pollution, the industrial waste, the pesticides which are used in the agricultural fields, they cause serious effects to the sensitive species and thus lead to the loss and elimination from the population. For example, the decline of the fish-eating birds and falcons, which are linked to the use of pesticides. The loss and the decline of vultures due to the toxic effect of the use of diclofenac drug, which causes renal failure and visceral gout in birds feeding on the carcasses of animals treated with the drug. So how do you conserve this biodiversity? There are three basic elements to conserve biodiversity for sustainable development. That is save, study and use. And in order to slow down the loss of biodiversity, you need to understand the role of biodiversity in the ecosystem and its importance for human beings. In order to increase the understanding of the biodiversity, representative and viable samples of ecosystem, species and populations have to be maintained and prevent further destruction or degradation of habitats by mankind. So there are four strategies for biodiversity conservation: in situ conservation, ex situ conservation, reduction of anthropogenic activities, and rehabilitation of species. In situ conservation, by establishing protected areas like national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, with proper management, restore degraded habitats within and outside the protected areas. Ex situ conservation, which includes establishing botanical gardens, germplasm banks, pollen, seed, gene and DNA banks, reduction of the human or anthropogenic activities, rehabilitation of species which are threatened or endangered by identifying them and introducing them. So let us summarize what we have studied. What is biodiversity? By now, you should be able to understand what is biodiversity, the importance of biodiversity, what causes biodiversity, and how does a plant or a species contribute to the well-being of humans? What is a gene pool? Why is it important to preserve as many as gene pools? How is biodiversity related to a balance in the ecosystem? What is a primary factor for biodiversity loss? How does an introduced species cause ecological disruption to the native species? And how can each stratum of the tourism industry contribute to the conservation of biodiversity? Thank you.